Hello and welcome to the China Masterclass webinar. My name is Paul Sutton, and in case you're new to this series, the focus of all these webinars is about how to create long-term trust, relationships and value in relation to the China market. And each webinar we catch up with someone who has particular expertise or has a particular role to play in this area. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Sally Yip, who is an expert in the area of China PR and China brand building. And I'm going to ask her to introduce our special guest today, who is Azlina.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot, Paul. And thank you so much, Azlina, for spending time with us to share your insights today. I have the honor to introduce Azlina. I know Azlina for a few years now, and she is really the expert in the British China international architecture industry. So Azlina has been a director of international at the Royal Institute of British Architects over the past 6 years. RIBA was founded in 1834. It is a global professional membership body that serves its members and society in order to deliver better buildings and places, stronger communities, and a sustainable environment. I would say Azlina is truly instrumental to the international development of the RIBA, including China and Asia. So today we are super excited to hear all the secrets and insights from Azlina about how RIBA is helping the international members, meaning architecture firms, to enter and build their strong reputation in the Chinese markets. So to kick off with, Azlina, I would love to ask you, so I know that RIBA recently set up a China charter and opened an office in Shanghai just before COVID. So how was the decision made? What kind of support does RIBA provide for its members in China? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sally, and thank you, Paul, too, for that very kind introduction. I'm not sure I'm the expert, but we certainly entered the China market at a very, very interesting time. Sally alluded that we entered the market just before COVID, and we literally do mean just before COVID. It was January 2020, but it has been one hell of a learning in a positive way. And Sally, to answer your question, yes, RIBA has been around for nearly 200 years, actually. We'll be celebrating our 200 years anniversary very, very soon. And we are a global organization with, over 50,000 members, 7,000 of which, over 7,000 now, are outside United Kingdom. And we also validate 52 schools of architecture outside United Kingdom as well. Addition to that, we are one of the world's largest architecture collection in the world. Lots of wonderful millions of items held by RIBA. So we are truly global, but, and I'm going to put a but in here, but we never actually had a physical footprint outside United Kingdom until about 2 years ago. And we chose China, we chose Shanghai, and we chose Sharjah in UAE. And how do we go about? Sally asked me, how was the decision made? Like any other organization, it was very much about research, which is vital in pretty much all contexts. A good choice, in my view, is an informed choice, and choosing an international market is difficult. And for RIBA, that's no exception either. We needed to know the right market for us to expand. So we did our research like any other organization. We started by ruling out markets from the get-go based on agreed criteria, also, involving opportunities for RIBA and our members, the growth forecast and GDP, and we took that into consideration. We then chose the markets to analyze. We want to work in, using the principle of screen, compare and select. And I suppose that is no surprise to many that that is why we chose China. It very much came on top with the development potential, the GDP and the positive contribution. And I think this is something I must emphasize. The RIBA and our members are not out there to tell people what to do in different jurisdictions. We are there to work with each other for the benefits of society and the environment. And that really is quite, pivotal in our decision making. And we feel we have much to give China in terms of placemaking and vice versa. We're learning loads, which is excellent. Your second question was about the support that the Institute give to our members in China. And all members of the RIBA are members of the Institute. We don't actually differentiate a UK member to an international member, which I think is really good. So a member in China can access exactly the same benefits as someone who is sitting in London or Manchester, Birmingham or York. And there are some limitations, we can't deny, in terms of accessibility, like attending physical events, lobbying UK government and all that kind of thing. But more and more of our work, this is one of the things about pandemic, isn't it, have moved to virtual platform, and that's providing an easy accessibility for all. So we are seeing a lot more of global interaction from different parts of the world, which is something we can really offer our Chinese members. And we also have a team in China. We have an in-country team that promotes our RIBA work. We create and deliver a program of activities. Last 18 months, although it has been a strange time for many, we have really gone in a very positive way. We've delivered a series of wonderful programs. We launched a campaign about last summer, I think 2020, where we named it Hello China. We featured talks and events at local cities, local issues. We also ran digital talk series, which we featured at the global level, featuring top Chinese architects, including Ding Jiangli from Tsinghua University, Li Jinggang, and Li Jiangling from Tongji University. So really, it's a two-way thing. It's not just about focusing China internally. It's about also taking that wonderful Chinese architecture to the global market. It is what we offer our members, is that global connection. It's not just about servicing them at the professional level, but it's about interconnecting people from all over the world. And I think that's a really important thing for us. And with that, we also launched, and I think, Sally, you absolutely were instrumental in this. You and your team supported us through this project. We launched 88 Places and Spaces photography competition, which was open to the public as well in China last year. It was a fascinating journey that we went through with Sally and her team. Really 4 themes. It was a huge success. We produced a calendar at the end, and because of that success, we're taking that idea now and putting it as a global photography competition. So it's moved on. So you can see when I say when we learn from each other, we really do, and we are now putting that learning to a much more global market.
That's really interesting. So if I can understand, like maybe your China office has different roles. So it sounds like part of it is helping your international members to access China, but part of it is actually engaging with and potentially recruiting local Chinese members. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Our China office is like an RIBA, like a mini RIBA in China, but obviously we don't represent the local institute because they do have ASC. But yeah, we are recruiting. We also have a lot of new members in China that signed up. And part of them is also to deliver a program of activities across China and outside the global market as well. It's about connecting people to each other.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of that role of helping RIBA members to access China or to enter China, are there particular success stories or examples of architectural firms who you think have really cracked it or are helpful as inspiration for firms which are considering that focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, China for UK firms is an interesting one. Post-Brexit, companies are looking outside United Kingdom and Europe for opportunities, and rightly so. And I think, it is very difficult for small. So I should go back one step by saying that the majority of architecture practices in the United Kingdom are small businesses. They're small, they're tiny. There may be one person or, talking about 1 to 10 person. And that export is a scary thing. Even for big organizations like RIBA, it took us years to decide. But actually, the one thing about having a small firm is the ability to be much more agile. And respond to needs. That's a big opportunity there. So what we do is we work, RIBA, my team, RIBA International, work very closely with the UK government. Lots of great initiative through the Department of International Trade to encourage new export. So export shouldn't just be about the big practices, it's about being much more inclusive. And we're working really hard to do that with them at the moment, saying, hey, everybody can do this, everybody can do this. It's about the right product and right services in the right environment. So I'll give an example of a small practice in London, White Red Architects, run by young architects. I think quite a few of them came from Foster's previously, and they've never worked in China at all. But they really want to explore that market. So we invited them. Well, we ran a competition on behalf of a large developer in Shenzhen, Kaizen Holdings, which is for the Ancient Tree Civilization project. We did promote it to everyone. We also sent it to them and said, look, if you want to try, this could be a really good way for you to try and enter into competition to start understanding the different way of working in China, just like you would in a different country. They did enter, they produced this great design, and they were shortlisted in the top 6 amongst very big practices. Wow. So it just shows, you've got to give it a go. You've got to chance it, understand that market. They took their time and they thoroughly, their feedback to me is they had fun. They had fun doing the competition, bringing in some of their knowledge and learning new ones as well, and put together this wonderful ideas. I mean, they were in excess of 500 that entered that competition, so did it. Amazing. So I think that's another example why small practices shouldn't be put off at all.
Okay, so that's an amazing example, isn't it? It's an incredible inspiration. So I guess from a commercial perspective, the kind of projects that potentially, what is the prize for those mid-tier or smaller practices as well as the big ones? Is it projects like that working with a local Chinese developer?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to accept that architecture is a highly regulated market overseas, so you can't just go in and say, hey, I'm going to design that and deliver that. It just doesn't make sense. It's the same as an architect coming to the United Kingdom. It's the same thing. It's highly regulated. So the prize for the UK architects is very much about working with local architects. Yeah. We encourage that. This is why I talk about global community. So they would go in and work with a local architect that's registered locally. So we can make that connection. We have an office there. We have a network of members that we can introduce them to each other as well. So they work with each other to bring in different design ideas, design values that is cohesive to produce that design excellence that fit in that requirement from the client. Client could be developer, could be government, could be education institution, but your client, or it could even be private clients, which we are seeing an increase of as well. But architecture is taking a different phase in history post-pandemic. It's no longer just about a statement architecture. This is now, we have moved on, which is a good thing about the pandemic. We are now suddenly being shook and say, hey, this is about placemaking. This is about people and building, how we bring them together. And I think this is where British architects and Chinese architects together can really make a difference in terms of a placemaking. It's no longer just about building.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's possible for firms of architects to actually get started on an individual project. You don't necessarily need to build the office and recruit locally first as a first step. There could be a project that could be handled remotely in the early stage, and then you kind of lean into it.
Yeah, you can certainly. You need to work with a local architect who are registered, whether they're class 1 or class 2 architects in China. And it's not easy to get a registration, and rightly so. So you would work with them, they would deliver it. So you could work remotely in terms of the design ideas, but ideally long term, medium to long term, you should be, if you're taking the market seriously, you should be planning to have a presence there. There is nothing like being in the country to understand the culture, the country's needs. Being in that geographic area is important to be able to put forward good design, because ultimately a building is there to be used and it needs to be able to respond to the needs of its users. Yeah. Beautiful building, if it's not being used, it's not a great building. So I think that's kind of the mantra we always talk about.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of the nuts and bolts of what firms need to, your member firms need to do, and I guess this is directly within Sally's area of excellence. But you mentioned entering into a competition. You can't rely on being shortlisted for that kind of thing. What kind of strategies or tactics are you seeing your members using in relation to China just to build up that market awareness and build that exposure?
Yeah, just like what they would do here. They would go out there, they would seek out opportunities, talk to clients, build up that reputation as well. The one thing about China, which is very different from the United Kingdom, is how they are digi-savvy. I mean, I've never known a country that is so digital savvy. And for our firms and even for our RIBA, our learning has been WeChat, Weibo are absolutely critical. Everybody operates. Without it, you can't operate. So it's about pivoting what you would know in terms of branding and marketing in the UK, where it can be quite traditional and conservative at times, and making it much more relevant in China, and really using, the right channels, the right platform to put across your views. A lot of our members who are first entering would enter via a competition like White Red Architects, get themselves known at that local level. That's really important as well. You can't go in cold turkey because it's quite difficult. And also be part of the wider programming. There's lots of really interesting projects that's happening. Things like Design Shanghai, Design Beijing, there's going to be Design Shenzhen this year. Just being part of those wider design community brings people together and help to elevate branding and what they can offer. I mean, it's really important for our members. There's lots of architects in this world, and one thing what we see have worked really well is the ability to differentiate themselves. What is their added value? Like White and Red Architects bring in the added value from their thinking of working in a sustainable way. So bringing that added value and really highlighting it using that digital channel is really important.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe at this point I can just hand over to Sally to ask if when you're working with these kind of organizations as you do, what kind of portfolio of tactics do you usually recommend for people starting, or businesses starting out, to make a concerted entry into the China market?
Yeah, thank you. I'm totally agree with Azlina to really understand the right platforms for the right audience in China. It just because it's different. But to those who are totally new to the Chinese market, who are unknown in the Chinese market, the first thing I would say is actually to get something done in Chinese. If you cannot have a Chinese website, please have a Chinese brochure at least, because it does make a difference. Rather than sending an English brochure to a Chinese client in China, just spend very little money to do a Chinese brochure at the very minimum. That's always the first baby step I advise company who want to talk to Chinese people or Chinese clients. And then look further. And I would say it's a long-term investment. So don't expect that in 3 or 6 months you're going to win a client. It really doesn't work like this. So I think for even big or small, if you look to China, you have to be prepared to make at least 12-month commitment, I would say. And then look to what you can commit during these 12 months, such as WeChat, Weibo, or other top press publications that are still well read by those business leaders, CEOs. So really looking into the target audience and then decide what is the best channel to reach to them.
Yeah, I guess it may be that the target audience for non-Chinese architectural firms or RIBA members could actually be local Chinese architects firms as potential joint venture partners or sort of informal partnerships. And I'm just guessing here that part of the initial steps could be just refocusing on what is the story of this particular firm, in other words the non-Chinese firm, and therefore what is the USP, what's the message, what's the reason for a local Chinese firm to choose that firm to partner with.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Just to echo what Sally said, the ability to speak the language is absolutely critical, or having at least, seen to do things to make sure you can. I mean, I can't speak a word of Mandarin, let's be honest, apart from hello. But also, making that relationship, because it is about the culture in China is very different from the UK in some ways. I mean, everywhere's different, right? But what we find in China, certainly what I found in China, is about building relationship and trust. And that can take a little bit of time. It's not going to be an overnight thing. And some of the clients, and generally in China, they do invest significant of money into their projects. And it's rightly so that they would want trust to be part of it, so that they can have that really good trusted client and practice relationship to understand their needs. And if they have two practices, one Chinese local, one the UK, that needs to be translated right as well, so nothing is lost in translation. So what you get in the end is fully considered at the very beginning. So that's why that relationship expands, Paul, you're right, beyond just client and a UK practice. It needs to be with whoever the partnership is involved as well. So it's very much a collaborative way of working.
Yeah, I guess that this is one of the themes that often comes up on these interviews, these webinars. It's this kind of dual track. On the one hand, it's a long-term investment, it's a long-term game, because the prize is so huge, so it's worthwhile. On the other hand, there needs to be that ability to respond immediately. So there's no point generating interest and then you get an inquiry and it takes them a month to reply, because there's no one who can actually respond in language. That immediacy is absolutely key. I hope you'd agree, Sally, in terms of the China market. It needs to be 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've all experienced that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know, Azlina, if you would have any top tips in terms of your member firms in this situation who are saying, yes, this could be interesting. What should they do right now?
Yeah, what they should really do is, for our member firms, our advice is research. Make sure they ask the question early and ask again, finding out who will be the best partnership. We've talked about collaboration and partnership. And then research is really important so that they can make sure that they put everything in place. Like, as you say, they need to be able to respond within minutes, 24 hours, not a month. So they need to put all those in place as well. And another thing for our firms, which we always talk about, is the regulatory compliance. Absolutely critical in the market, whether it's China or elsewhere, that regulatory compliance are always at in their mind, because they need to be able to comply with local regulations. And I'm not just talking about the legal aspects in terms of setting up a company. I'm talking about the taxation. I'm talking about the planning rules. And it changes from one province to another. This is why research cannot be more important when you start thinking about going abroad. And also, the other top tip is that you are an RIBA member. If you're not, should be one, because actually that's what my team does. We are here to support you. If you're a UK member wanting to enter a new market like China, come to us. We will guide you through that journey, and we have in-country teams as well, which will help to make that introduction. That's that baby steps that Sally talk about, which is so important to get right. You fall quite quickly if you don't get that baby steps right. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to support our members. So come to us, and we will guide you through that process so it becomes much less daunting.
Fantastic.
Excellent. You're the go-to expert for entering Chinese market. So for the last question, Azlina, if I may ask, for RIBA or non-RIBA members, what are the big opportunities for them in China for the next 3 to 5 years? And what would be the key message that you would like our RIBA members to take away and action now?
Yeah. Sure, Sally. Oh God, that's a good question, isn't it? Because there's always a presumption that Chinese architecture is not great, but actually it's the complete opposite. Chinese architecture is marvelous and is actually a very mature market. There's some great architects from China doing amazing work globally, including Ma Yangsong and Li Yichun, just to name a few. And there are some fabulous buildings in China, absolutely top class, and top class schools of architecture as well. So I think the top tip for new entrant to the market. We always hear about Shanghai, we always hear about Beijing, we always hear about Shenzhen. These markets are very well served already. But don't forget, China is a huge, huge country. There are lots of other opportunities in the, slightly behind in terms of Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. They will need many more opportunities for architects to start thinking about placemaking. So in other provinces, in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, where they're just at the beginning, or in kind of middling, thinking about how do they make their cities different, better. And that's a really good opportunity for RIBA members to enter, because they can bring in new, fresh ideas to work in harmony at local level. And of course, global pandemic has inevitably changed everything, what people want and what people cherish as well. And here we have an opportunity for RIBA members to think about placemaking that caters for health and well-being as an integral part of design. So inclusive design, which afford accessibility to outside space, for example. And the biggest challenge that I know not talk about as much as it has been in recent years for obvious reason is climate challenge. Climate change is the biggest issue that's facing all of us. So sustainability, climate change, zero carbon is where our RIBA members, UK members in particular, have a lot of expertise in, and that could be really beneficial for markets like China. And also, it's not just about new building, it's about readapting and reuse. And UK architects are ahead of this. We have so many terrible buildings. We certainly have terrible buildings where you could so instead of we all know this in the profession, to knock a building down would actually emit more carbon emission. Is actually really bad for the environment. The better use is how do we readapt and reuse, and we have seen some amazing things that's happened, and that's where UK architects are well ahead in terms of their thinking, just because they've had lots more building that they needed to readapt over the years. So lots and lots there that they can come in, which is much more specialized. But again, understanding that local market is key to make it work.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much, Azlina. Usually at this point, I try to summarize key themes, but we've covered so much ground that I'm kind of struggling. I mean, obviously, there's just the scale of the opportunity in China, which is staggering. Azlina, you mentioned the opportunities in second-tier cities, third-tier cities, which is just incredible. I know this from personal experience because we actually chose to set up an office in a third-tier city in China because it didn't actually matter for us where we were, but it had that infrastructure and we had the local relationships that made that easier for us. It was just our own path. Azlina, you mentioned the need for a research-based approach. Do your homework, but equally that there are opportunities just to lean into this, for practices to inform themselves as to the competitions which are on, as to the networking opportunities, and presumably just reaching out to your team as Azlina in terms of the support that can be provided in making connections and introductions. We also talked about the nuts and bolts of actually building brand, building reputation, building connections on a long-term basis, and this is where Sally's skill set comes in, and it's about creating a long-term sustainable set of actions, whether that includes setting up your WeChat accounts and Weibo accounts and having that infrastructure, which doesn't have to be complicated, so that you've got Chinese language materials, but you've also got the ability, maybe someone back in the UK who can actually speak and respond promptly to the opportunities that come up, because they will come up. And finally, we talked about the fact that China is not a virgin market. There are lots of local competitors, established practices there. So it's not, and this is a common theme for pretty much all of our webinars. It's not that UK or any other practices can go to China and expect to be treated as amazing just because they're there. No, that's not the case. But that idea of partnerships with local practices, local firms, and 1 + 1 = 5 or something like that, it's a really exciting model. So thank you again so much. We've really appreciated it. I'm going to hand it over to Sally just to say goodbyes and to remind everyone how they can reach out to us if they have any comments or suggestions.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot, Azlina, again for your most valuable insights, and thank you, Paul, for the nice summary of today's webinar. For those who have further questions or want to reach out to us, please do email us at Chinamasterclass@11kconsulting.com or drop us an email. On our LinkedIn, and we are very much look forward to seeing you again soon. More amazing speakers in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.